The Galactic Council chamber smelled like 6 different kinds of anxiety, and I was pretty sure at least 2 of them were mine. I'd been asleep for maybe 3 hours when the Vorkai security detail showed up at my quarters and stood there, pulsing pale gold at me, which I'd learned meant, "Please come immediately." And probably also, "We apologize for the hour," because the Vorkai apologized for everything, including the weather on planets they didn't own. I pulled on my CDF dress grays in the dark, didn't bother with the decorations, and followed 2 7-foot bioluminescent diplomats through corridors that smelled like someone had been burning ceremonial incense over a wet dog. The council chamber was already full when I got there. 47 species represented, most of them awake by biology, and a few of them swaying gently in their nutrient tanks, which I tried not to stare at. I was the only human. Counselor Yethra of the Vorkai met me at the door. She was tall and silver, and moved like water flowing uphill, and her skin was doing a deep violet ripple that I'd learned meant she was trying to project calm while internally losing her mind. She put a hand on my shoulder, a gesture she'd adopted specifically for me, because my species apparently needed physical contact to feel reassured, which was either very thoughtful or very condescending, and I'd never decided which. "There has been an event," she said. "What kind of event?" Her skin went briefly white. In Vorkai color speech, white meant grief. She'd never gone white at me before. They made me sit down before they told me. I appreciated that more than I could say. The Dravith Collective had destroyed 3 human colony worlds in the Kepler Reach. Not invaded, not occupied, destroyed. Aleth's Landing, New Cartagena, Sora's Hope. Each colony had between 3 and 4 million residents. The Dravith had given no warning, stated no demands, offered no explanation. They had simply arrived in overwhelming force and removed those worlds from the inhabited universe. 11,240,000 people. 11,240,000. The council secretary was reading the casualty projections in a flat monotone, the way you read numbers when numbers are too big to carry any other way. And around me, 47 species murmured and signaled to each other in 47 different languages. Some of them with their bodies, some with their voices, some in frequencies I couldn't hear. Yethra sat beside me and pulsed a very soft gold, which I was pretty sure meant something like, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I didn't cry. I went very still. Later, Yethra would tell me that she'd assumed this meant I was processing calmly. She would tell me this with the particular tone the Vorkai used when acknowledging a mistake they found personally troubling. She had read my stillness as composure. She hadn't been watching my hands. The council moved, with impressive efficiency, into formal session. The first 3 speakers addressed the tragedy in broad, formal terms: the senseless loss, the violation of the Galactic Compact, the need for measured response. The 4th speaker, a counselor from the Heth sovereignty, whose species had 17 words for different kinds of cautious, spent 12 minutes explaining why immediate action of any kind would be premature, destabilizing, and potentially inflammatory. The 5th speaker suggested that Earth be formally requested to refrain from any unilateral military response while the council investigated. I asked for the floor. Yethra looked at me with an expression that was mostly violet and a little bit, "Please don't." I looked back at her with an expression that was entirely, "I'm going to." The council granted me the floor. What I said next was, diplomatically speaking, a war crime against the concept of diplomacy. I want to be clear about that. I have a job title that includes the word attaché, which implies a certain level of restraint and tact, and the speech I gave in the Galactic Council chamber at 0340 hours on the 14th of March was neither of those things. My diplomatic career has never fully recovered. I've made a kind of peace with that. I started by thanking the council for the floor. That part was fine. That was the last fine part. The Colonial Defense Forces fleet, I said, was mobilized 6 hours ago. The chamber did a thing that 47 species doing simultaneous surprise looks like. It was a lot. Counselor Yethra went briefly. Brilliantly white. I kept going. Earth Command had authorized the mobilization the moment the attack confirmation came through. Before the council had even convened. Before I'd been woken up. Before any of this. The CDF didn't need the council's permission to move a fleet. We'd signed the Galactic Compact to protect our people. And 11 million of our people were already ash drifting through dead star systems. And the Compact hadn't protected them, and so we had made other arrangements. The chamber erupted. I led it. Yethra formally protested. She did it with great dignity, and a voice like bells. The Vorkai always sounded like bells when they were most upset. Some kind of autonomic response, and she said that unilateral military action without council authorization was a clear violation of Article 7 of the Compact, and that Earth would face formal censure and possibly suspension of trade privileges and other things that I heard as words but wasn't currently processing as meaningful. I waited for a pause. I'd like to say something, I said. I took out my datapad. I'd had 2 minutes between being woken up and being escorted into the chamber. I'd used those 2 minutes to pull names. Davi Ose Mensa, I said. 43 years old, mechanical engineer. He was on Aleth's Landing building water reclamation systems for the new settlements. He had 2 kids back on Earth. His daughter just started university. The chamber was quieter. Priya Katri Nair, 31. She was a schoolteacher on New Cartagena. Her students called her Miss K. I found 7 of their drawings in the public archive from last winter's holiday pageant. Quieter still. Benedict Wojcik, 67. Retired. He'd gone to Sora's Hope specifically because the sunsets were supposed to be extraordinary. Something about the atmospheric particulate from the nearby nebula. His neighbor back in Krakow told a reporter he talked about those sunsets every time they spoke. I looked up from the datapad. Isabella Ferreira Santos. 8 years old. I let that sit for a second. Her parents were both agricultural specialists. They moved to Sora's Hope because they wanted her to grow up somewhere with real sky. Another second. She liked turtles. I don't know why that was in the public record. It was. The chamber was very quiet now. Yethra's skin had gone a color I didn't have a name for. Tomasz Lewandowski. 55. A mechanic. Rosa Delgado Vega. 91. Her family says she made tamales that people traveled across 3 systems for. I set the datapad down. Those are 6 of the 11 million. I only had 2 minutes. The other 10 million, 999,000. 994 of them had people who loved them and things they were good at. And reasons they were out there, at the edge of inhabited space, trying to build something. Nobody said anything. The council has been treating 11 million as a number, I said. Earth doesn't treat it as a number. Councillor Veth Oren of the Heth Sovereignty, the one with 17 words for caution, raised a formal point of procedure and asked, in a tone that was trying to be calm and not quite making it, what exactly the CDF fleet had been authorized to do. I told them. The chamber went very, very silent. Yethra's skin cycled through 6 colors in 3 seconds, which in Vorkai body language meant something close to, I have just recalibrated my entire understanding of this species. The thing about the Galactic Council is that they had never had to watch someone actually mean it before. The Draveth were not a small power. They controlled 14 systems, maintained a fleet that had won 4 major engagements in the last 2 centuries, and were generally considered one of the 6 species in the galaxy you didn't poke without being very sure of your math. The Council had dealt with them through negotiation, through carefully worded resolutions, through the kind of long diplomatic pressure that works on species that are worried about being seen as unreasonable. The CDF didn't negotiate. The live feed came through at 0700 hours, 2 hours into the Council's continuing emergency session. I was still in my seat. I hadn't left except once to use a facility that was designed for a species with a very different plumbing arrangement, which I mention only because at some point you have to laugh at something or you go somewhere you can't come back from. The feed showed the CDF fleet dropping out of faster-than-light transit at the edge of the Dravath home system. 112 ships. Not the whole CDF. This wasn't everything we had. This was specifically what you sent when you wanted to be absolutely certain. What followed was 4 hours of footage that I will not describe in detail because some of it I still see when I sleep, and not all of it in a bad way, and I'm not sure what that says about me. The CDF moved through the Dravath system with a precision that had clearly been planned for a long time. Every military installation, every weapons depot, every shipyard and launch facility and orbital defense platform. Each strike was preceded by a broadcast on all frequencies warning any civilian vessels to move to established safe corridors. And those corridors held, because the CDF made sure they held. They dismantled the Dravath military capacity, like a surgeon removes a tumor completely, cleanly, and with the kind of focus that comes from having spent a long time being very angry and choosing to direct that anger somewhere precise. The Dravath requested council intervention at hour 2. Then again at hour 3. The council debated. Several members moved for formal resolutions condemning the action. Some of those passed. I sat through all of it. Yethra watched me during the feed. I know, because I could feel her watching. That particular quality of attention the Vorkai have, that feels like light on skin. I didn't look at her. I watched the screens. My hands were folded on the table in front of me, which took more effort than I'm proud of. The CDF Fleet Commander's final transmission was played for the chamber at hour 4. Commander Ades Okonkwo Ibe. I'd met her once at a recruitment function, years ago. She was a small woman with very calm eyes and the kind of posture that makes you want to stand up straighter. Her transmission was 41 seconds long. She gave her name and rank, the date and time, the coordinates of the Dravath home system. She stated that the operation had concluded. She stated that no Dravath civilians had been harmed. She stated the names of the 3 colony worlds. She ended the transmission. No gloating, no declaration, no list of demands. Just the names of the dead, spoken aloud into a defeated star system, and then silence. When the feed ended, I stood up. The chamber was doing the multi-species version of stunned silence, which was actually quite loud in a way that didn't involve sound. It was in the stillness of bodies that would normally be moving, the absence of the ambient signals and shifts and ripples that 47 species generate when they're processing normally. Earth will accept whatever formal censure or sanctions the Council chooses to levy. I said, we understand our obligations under the Compact. We will cooperate fully with any investigation into the operation and provide complete documentation of every action taken and every precaution made. I picked up my datapad. Davi Ose Mensa, Priya Katrinair, Benedict Wojcik, Isabella Ferreira Santos, Tomasz Lewandowski, Rosa Delgado Vega. I said their names clearly, into the silence of a chamber that held the representatives of most of the intelligent life in the known galaxy. And I let the silence hold them for a moment, the way you hold something fragile. Then I sat down. Yethra was still for a long time afterward. When she moved, it was to reach across and put her hand on mine. A gesture she had learned from me, for humans, because we need to be touched when we're not all right. Her skin was cycling through colors. I still don't have names for the Vorkai color vocabulary. Had evolved over millions of years, on a world with 7 moons and bioluminescent oceans, and even they sometimes ran out of words. Later that night, much later, after the formal session had finally closed and the corridors of the council station had quieted, and I had eaten something that I think was supposed to be food and stared at the ceiling of my quarters for a couple of hours. Yethra filed her official report to the Vorkai delegation. She sent me a copy, which she had never done before. The body of the report was detailed and precise, with all the formal language and careful analysis that the Vorkai diplomatic corps required. But Yethra had appended a personal observation at the end, which was also unusual. In 40 years of diplomatic service, she had appended 3 personal observations to official reports. This was the third. "I have spent this day believing I understood grief," she wrote. "I have lost colleagues. I have lost, once, someone I loved. I know what it looks like in a Vorkai body, the stilling, the dimming, the long, slow cycling back to color. I have read extensively about grief in other species. I believed I understood it as a phenomenon, if not always as an experience. I was wrong. What I observed today was not grief as I understand it. It was grief and something else, simultaneously, in a way that our model of consciousness does not have room for. In our understanding, grief is a state. It interrupts. It passes, eventually. And other states return. We do not grieve and plan at the same time. We do not grieve and act. We do not say the names of the dead and then stand up and do the thing. I do not think humans grieve the way we grieve. I think when humans lose something they love, it becomes part of the motion forward rather than a stop in it. The dead are not set down and returned to. They are carried. They go everywhere the human goes after. This may be the most dangerous thing about them. It may also be why, of all the species I have encountered in 4 decades of diplomatic work, they are the only ones I would want beside me if things went wrong. I read it 3 times. Then, I set it on my chest and looked at the ceiling and thought about Rosa Delgado Vega and her tamales, and what it would have been like to sit at her table, on a planet with a good view of the nebula, and eat something made with love. I didn't cry. I was past crying by then. But I carried her, same as all the rest. That's just how we're built.